Hi everyone, I'm Don Saucier. I'm the Faculty Associate Director of our Teaching and Learning Center. And I'm so excited that you found your way to our professional development series. For those of you who are new, we do this at noon all throughout the academic year. We do this in real time over Zoom. It's going to be the same Zoom link. And we also post these for asynchronous viewings later. So as you're kind of seeing the wonderful event today, and at the end you say, oh my goodness, I wish more of my colleagues were here, you can share the link with them and they can be here asynchronously a little bit later. We'll remind you that when you come to these events, we actually have the opportunity for you to earn a TLC certificate, a professional development certificate. We have those both for graduate students as well as for faculty and staff. My colleague's going to drop the information into the chat so you can see that. If you're not able to access the chat, we have it available on our webpage as well. We also have, if you're a faculty member who's looking to increase other people's teaching excellence, not just your own, you can potentially apply to be a TLC fellow. That information is available at that link as well. And what happens, those TLC fellows get to present next year in our professional development series. So it's a great way to kind of expand your impact on the teaching excellence of our university. I always like to kind of talk about next week before this week. Oh, one more thing, sorry. We have a TLC hub as well. As many of you are aware, the K opportunity in our university with the changes in K-State today make things a little more challenging. So we have a TLC hub, which is a Teams channel that allows for us to get out information, to engage in chats and those kind of things. If you're interested in joining that, again, the information will be given in the chat. All right, so this week actually concludes a 3-event series within our series. We have another 3-event series starting next week, and that's going to be related to AI. AI is a thing. I don't know if you've heard of this, but AI is a thing. It's having some impact in higher education and how we teach and how our students learn. So next week, we're going to have an event by Sydney Alexis and Teresa Merritt Cassidy called Student Motivations to Use AI. The week after, we're going to have Alexei Shanian, who is last year's Kaufman Chair for University Distinguished Scholars, going to talk about AI issues in teaching, so more of the faculty perspective. And then that third week, we're going to have a chat where we get in here and we crowdsource and we unpack the issues with AI in teaching. So we get a kind of a 3-event series coming up on AI starting next week. We're super excited about. But this week is the third in our series of events related to student and faculty experience. So 2 weeks ago, we were talking about how we teach controversial material in our classes more safely. Last week, talked about well-being inside and outside the classroom for faculty. And today, we're going to talk about connecting for health, so tackling the effects of loneliness. And I'm very excited that we have colleagues Lindsay Berger and Chris Bowman here to share that with us. So I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you so much for being here.
Hey, thanks a lot, Don, and thanks everybody for joining us. I mean, as Lindsay and I, we have the easy part. We get to introduce some of our subject matter experts on campus about loneliness, and so we'll get to that. But first, I'll introduce myself. I'm Chris Bowman. I am the director of the Morrison Family Center for Student Wellbeing here at K-State. And Lindsay?
Awesome. Hi. Thanks, Chris. My name is Lindsay Berger. I am the Health and Wellbeing Project Administrator here at K-State. Today, Chris and I will be moderating our panel on the importance of connection, which ties into this year's K-State Common Read, Together, the Healing Power of Human Connection in a Sometimes Lonely World by Dr. Vivek Murthy.
And in that book, Dr. Murthy, he talks about how loneliness just isn't a private thing. It's a public health issue that affects our physical, mental, and emotional well-being across a lot of different areas. And, as faculty, we feel like we're all, and staff, we're in a unique position, right? To help create learning environments and where students feel a sense of belonging and connection. So that's kind of where we're at and why we invited some of our panelists to come on.
Yeah, here at K-State, we're deeply committed to fostering that sense of connection and belonging for our students, faculty, and staff. It's something we focus on through the Morrison Family Center for Student Wellbeing, and it's also emphasized across the university spaces like the classroom and Lafayette Health Center. Today, these efforts reflect our shared commitment to building a community where every Wildcat feels seen, supported, and valued.
So we're really happy to have 2 subject matter experts, or 2 panelists, to help us kind of explore the topic of loneliness and connection from a couple different perspectives. And so I'll introduce them, then I'll let them give a little bit about themselves. But we're really lucky to have the medical director of the Lafayette Student Health Center, Dr. Michael Campbell, and one of our staff therapists, Karin Batia, joining us to kind of give us a perspective of that physical and that mental health side of loneliness. So Dr. Campbell, if you want to give it a quick intro, I'll turn it over to you.
Hey, I'm Dr. Michael Campbell. Like Chris said, I'm the medical director at Lafayette Health Center. I've been at K-State for 10 years now. I'm a family practice doctor, sports medicine doctor. We see all different kinds of issues and complaints that people have, and try to help students as best we can. I'm originally from Kansas. Know most of the places that they're saying that they're from when I talk with students and try to connect with them a little bit at every interaction that I have, every patient visit that I have.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Campbell. And Karin, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, hi. My name is Karin Patia. Like Chris said, I'm a staff therapist at CAPS, and also the outreach coordinator and also the alcohol and other drug educator, a lot of roles. But yeah, and I am Indian, but I was born and raised in the Middle East. So my family lives in Dubai. And so yeah, been in the States for getting to 10 years next year, which is crazy. But yeah, I'm happy to be here and share my perspective in terms of the work that I've done and and services that we offer at CAPS to try to help have that supportive space for students who experience loneliness and struggle with that, or even just social anxiety in general.
And something I'll say is we have some questions that we're going to ask, but at any point in time, if anybody has any questions or wants anything from our panelists, please, well, this is not a scripted thing by any means. You all just ask. And like, again, we get the easy job. We let the subject matter experts answer it. So anyway, Lindsay, I'll kick it over to you.
Awesome. Okay, great. Well, we are going to start by setting the stage. Dr. Campbell and Karin, why is connection such a critical part of well-being and physical and mental health?
I'll just say, our physical health and our mental health are very closely tied, a lot more than most people realize. There's lots of physical diseases that people will get as a result of stress or mental health issues. And then the vice versa, if we're not feeling well, say we're in pain, that's going to affect our mental health as well. So they're very closely linked. A lot of us don't always recommend or recognize those links in ourselves. We're better at recognizing it maybe in other people. And then the other thing I'd say is, as humans, we're not really meant to live all by ourselves. Since caveman, early human times, they lived in villages and they lived in a social community. And so what the Together book and Dr. Murthy talked about quite a bit is when those people were isolated from their community, that was a big deal for their safety. So as a survivor, being able to survive when there are all these predators around, you needed to rely on others. And so as humans, we have over time really that has continued on, where we're not meant to live by ourselves, and that connection is important in lots of different ways, and it affects us physically and mentally when we don't have it.
Yeah, just to add to that, like kind of adding to what Dr. Campbell said, like belonging and connection is one of our most basic psychological needs, just like food, shelter, safety, all those things, right? So a lot of times when we feel disconnected or feel lonely, it can activate the same parts of the brain that actually respond to physical pain as well. And so that's why, like Dr. Campbell said, there is that mind-body connection. Even though we both are working on those the specific aspects of it, we do often in our work tend to incorporate like the physical and mental side, and talk about those things, because there is a connection between those two things and how that is impacting students and just young adults in general.
All right, excellent. So I'll ask, this one's for you, Dr. Campbell. So in the book Together, Dr. Murthy makes a connection saying that loneliness can be as bad as smoking 15 cigarettes a day, right? When you hear that, what do you think? Is there science? What would be some good takeaways from that, or can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, so that is based off a study that was done a few years ago that looked at people that reported loneliness, and it compared those people to the average population, and they saw that loneliness was correlated with an increased risk of premature death. About 26% higher chance of premature death for people that were reporting loneliness, which is kind of eye-opening to me. And if you would compare that 26% increased risk of premature death, that's about equivalent to the risk of smoking 15 cigarettes a day. So I think most of us have a pretty good realization of what smoking can do for our risk, but that kind of shows a higher severity than I think most of us realize that loneliness can do. So yeah, that's based off that study.
And a little follow up to that, Dr. Campbell. So, how do you see social disconnection influencing physical health for issues such as like sleep problems, heart disease, immunity, right? Like we talked about, but what are some of the other areas, like I said, those with sleep, heart, and immunity, can social disconnection come through with their physical health?
Basically, the way this works is that our human physiology is meant to have some connection. And when we don't have that, we feel lonely, and that increases some of our stress hormones. When you were in the village and the village said, you can't live with us anymore, you have to live by yourself, that would lead to a lot of stress and what we call hypervigilance. So um, you needed to be more focused and alert and aware of predators because you were all by yourself. You didn't have other people to be a warning system or to help you out. So your catecholamines, which are stress hormones, and your cortisol levels would go up. And that has continued to today times. So when we are feeling lonely, our stress hormones will go up. So things like epinephrine, which is adrenaline, norepinephrine, and dopamine, all those will go up along with cortisol, and those increase our stress levels. What they do is which can be good if you're in a fight or flight situation and you need to run away from a lion or something. You want to increase your blood pressure, increase your heart rate, be focused and alert. But if you're just sitting around day to day, it's not good to be that stressed all the time, 24/7. And so that ends up leading to things like high blood pressure. Cortisol levels that are higher can lead to higher blood sugars, so increased risk of diabetes. If you're focused and alert, you're not very tired, so you're not going to sleep very well. And some of the restorative benefits of sleep, you're not going to get those. That leads to insomnia. And then our immune system is not designed to be stressed 24/7. So our immune system doesn't work as well. So there's hypertension, high blood pressure, but just heart failure in general, increased risk of heart attack, strokes are all related to the increased stress levels that we get when we're more lonely. And so that's mostly how it physiologically impacts us.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Campbell. Karin, I have a few questions for you now. First, starting off, how does a lack of belonging contribute to anxiety, depression, or other mental health conditions in young adults?
Yeah, so like I said previously, again, it is one of our most basic psychological needs, right? And so a lot of times when that sense of isolation, whether it be socially, culturally, academically, continues to persist over a period of time and is kind of left ignored, it tends to increase. It basically just fuels like anxiety and depression symptoms, right? So I've worked with a lot of different students who describe feeling surrounded by people, but they still feel lonely, right? Like being on a college campus, there's a lot of people around you, but you can still feel lonely. And what's important about that is belonging doesn't necessarily just mean fitting in. It's not necessarily about just like having people around you. It's more about just being accepted for who you are. And so that lack of genuine connection often leads to the self-doubt, the negative self-talk, because again, us being human, we tend to be most critical about the way we think about ourselves and the way we treat ourselves. And that cycle of withdrawal basically just reinforces loneliness. In the book, like Dr. Murthy talks about just how loneliness isn't just an emotion. It's not like a negative personality trait that you have. It's a signal, right? It's telling you something, just like when you feel hungry or thirsty. It's telling us that like we need connection. And so again, if we ignore it for too long, it can erode both your mental and your physical health. And one thing that in this age definitely contributes to that is even social media, right? If we think about it, it kind of gives us the illusion of connection, but there's no emotional intimacy, right? You just know what's going on in other people's lives, but that doesn't have to necessarily mean that you feel connected to them. And so the gap between the appearance of what it looks like and the reality can heighten loneliness even more. So again, pros and cons of social media, like I'm sure we all know.
I'm so glad you brought that up because it's something that's impacting all of our students every single day. To go off of that, so once you've kind of identified that someone is experiencing loneliness, what can help people begin to rebuild a sense of connection and emotional safety?
Yeah, I think definitely starting small and being intentional about it, right? A lot of when I'm working with students who are struggling with just loneliness or just social anxiety is getting them to a place where they are intentional about just taking a gentle risk, right? So that risk can just be showing up to like a club meeting or an organization meeting or a group activity, or when you are checking out at the grocery store, you just ask the cashier how their day is going, right? Just reaching out to someone, or just simply allowing yourself to be a little more open, because emotional safety is the main thing that we're trying to work towards in terms of them being able to feel more comfortable in social situations. And so that tends to develop when people feel seen, heard, and again, accepted without judgment. And so that consistency and the empathy, whether it be from a friend, whether it be from a professor, whether it be from a therapist, helps to kind of reestablish that trust. And another thing that, again, Dr. Murthy really emphasizes on in the book as well is the power of service. And that's something that, since I've read more about it, it's something that I've been kind of incorporating in my work as well. And it's something that's really resonated with students, right? So when people engage in helping others, it kind of shifts focus from I'm alone to I matter and I can make a difference for someone else, right? And a lot of times that tends to increase even the oxytocin in our bodies, which is basically the is a hormone neurotransmitter. I'm not fully sure about the science, but basically it's that feel the thing that gives us that mushy, lovey feeling specifically. And so acts of service, like whether big or small, right, remind us that we matter, that we're a part of something larger than ourselves. And it's a really powerful way of rebuilding that connection and purpose. And so there's a lot of different opportunities and places on campus that I tend to refer them to, whether it be like volunteering at like Cat's Cupboard because they're always looking for that, or maybe the animal shelter like in Manhattan, or there's also Hands-On K-State, which is a really great resource for anyone that's looking to be involved in service and volunteering opportunities and that kind of stuff. And the other thing, going back to what I said in terms of how we often tend to be most critical about ourselves, I think it's important to have conversations about just like self-compassion as well, right? So when we are kind to ourselves, we open up space to connect more genuinely with others, and we can be more comfortable being our authentic selves with other people as well.
Yeah,
And I really like what Karin's saying, because so many people are looking for purpose as part of this. They feel lonely or isolated because they feel like if they weren't around anymore, nobody would notice. And so when you give them that purpose, that also decreases their loneliness. And then they also look at themselves and say, okay, well, other people have issues and I can help them with their issues. So when I'm not as when I'm lonely, maybe other people can help me with that. And whatever is giving them purpose, whatever skills they have that they can bring and feel like those are skills that they have, they're meeting other people that are either needing those skills or that have those skills themselves, and then they can connect with those people too. So it kind of goes hand in hand.
And something I'll add too is that, I think a lot of folks know like gratitude journals, right? We've talked about that, the 3 gratitudes, and that's something that's very common that a lot of folks know about as a way to boost your well-being. But there's a lot of research that show these pro-social behaviors, right? Doing something for others is another way to boost your sense of well-being and feeling like you have that purpose and connection. So it's always kind of fun to talk with folks like, yes, the gratitude journals are great, But if you want to find another avenue, doing something for someone else, a pro-social behavior is just a great another avenue to explore. And I think people have found it really, they like having another option, I guess is the best way to put it.
And it gives you a reason for being there and having some conversation with people that you wouldn't normally know. I think that's what's scary. It's different. It's hard to envision yourself having an hour conversation with a stranger, but if you're there for a reason, you're there for, you're volunteering at Cat's Cupboard, there's a natural conversation that's going to come out of that. And a lot of this is practice. So you need to start off, have a 5-minute conversation, have a 10-minute conversation. Eventually you get to know somebody, and then you have that genuine sense of connection. And most people are scared to reach out and make those connections because we are pretty harsh on ourselves and we feel anxious about being in social situations. But almost across the board, when people have those conversations and feel like they make some genuine connection, they always underestimate how well they're going to do in the conversation. And they also underestimate how much enjoyment they get out of it. Even for like introverted people, everybody needs varying levels of social connection, but everybody needs some.
Sure. Yeah. Kind of goes back to those little risks, right? It is that risk, that step that you have to take, even if it is just like asking how the cashier, how their day was, right? Like you may be doing that as a way of like, oh, this is the exercise I have to do to work on my loneliness. But they may also not realize that like maybe no one else has even said anything to that cashier that whole day. And them just asking the cashier how their day was just like one thing that they did, and it actually helped the other person as well. And they didn't realize it until they did it. So yeah.
I love that. Chris, were you going to add something real quick?
Don's got his hand up, I was going to say, so
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Thank you.
patiently waiting.
Yes.
So one of the things that we talked about a little bit ago, and then it came back, is this notion of kind of being harsh on ourselves, self-critical, and those sorts of things. And I wondered if you'd speak to the fact that, a lot of faculty and staff tell their students exactly what you're saying, and then they don't do it themselves. So I'm kind of, wondering if you can kind of take that, the person, the authority figure who maybe understands that that is something that might be normative for a student, but for them, they don't recognize or don't prioritize in their own lives those same kind of things. So I wonder if you could
Yeah.
talk about that for a second.
Yeah, I mean, I still do that to myself. So like it's again, we're human. It's human nature to do that, right? Even though like I'm a therapist, I know this is not good for me or it's not going to help me in any way. Like it's just like mental shortcuts that we may have been just socialized to kind of go towards as well. And so again, it's not, I think it starts with like building your own awareness. That's the really important first step to take, is because you're not going to realize you have a problem unless you actually notice it and build awareness about it yourself, right? So it could be again like taking those tiny steps to check in with yourself in terms of like when you notice those thoughts of you being like a lot more critical about yourself, checking in with that of like, okay, is that really true, right? Like I noticed that this is really happening for me. And a lot of times we kind of do that. And again, we've been socialized to do this in a way to kind of try to like motivate us, because like a lot of times, like you may have heard maybe from parents, grandparents, and that kind of stuff in terms of like back in my day, like I had to deal with all these struggles and whatever. And I had to go through the struggle to be able to come out of it, which is true. You definitely like pressure helps lead to change, but a lot of times like the way you treat yourself can actually have the opposite impact, to the point where it actually makes you feel worse about yourself and makes you less motivated to even try to do something about it. So yeah, that's a really good thing to bring up.
And I guess I would say, if you're able to get them to CAPS or Lafine, we can have those conversations. If you're comfortable having any of these conversations, what we do a lot of is shared decision making and making a plan with them to try to get some action. Because I see so many people that say they want to exercise and they say, well, I'm just going to exercise more. That never really works out that well. You need to be intentional and have specific goals of what you're going to do. So for loneliness, that could be I'm going to go to this group meeting once a week. I'm going to go to, if they're religious, go to a church service. I'm going to go to volunteer. I'm going to try to have 2 conversations for just to say hi and a quick conversation for people that I don't really know that are in my class, and put myself out there just a little bit, and then follow up in a couple weeks. If you're an advisor, you have your relationships with these students, and say, okay, did you do that? How did it go? What most of the time, if they actually did it, it wasn't as bad as what they thought it was going to be.
Can I follow up and say what if it is as bad as you thought it would be? Because we're kind of talking about the situation where we're misperceiving, how bad we did, how bad it could go, but sometimes things do go bad. So I was wondering, what do we do in those situations?
Depends on how bad we're talking about. So if it's causing depression, causing anxiety, there are treatments for that, whether that's talking to a therapist, whether that's medication. So if it does seem that bad, I think that's when it's more time to maybe get it assessed more by a medical professional. And then they will get treatments offered to them, and kind of have a higher level of response is maybe needed in those situations. Part of what would be their treatment would still be similar things to try to develop their connection, try to get them to identify things that are not scary that they could try doing. But it might rise to a higher level of treatments.
Yeah, and I want to clarify to what I think you were trying to get to, Dr. Campbell, was the aspect of like you said, Don, like, yeah, that possibility isn't going, right? The possibility of the worst possible thing happening isn't going away. And we don't want to dismiss that at all. But a lot of times, like when we get so caught up, because again, like tends to be human nature that like our brain just creates like the worst possible scenario. And then what anxiety tends to do is kind of like lead us to believe that that's the only way this is going to go, right? And that doesn't open up our own minds to the possibility of like there could be other ways it could go. It doesn't have to be the complete opposite, that like nothing will happen, but like there could be some middle ground in terms of like it could be bad, but it couldn't be as bad as you thought it was, right? So for example, like if we think about like someone like a first year student going to their first party, right? And they are really nervous about going to the party because they're thinking about how they won't have anything to say. They're going to be judged for whatever they say, and then like they'll be made fun of, and then like they'll be a laughing stock or something like that, right? Like the worst possible way the worst possible experience that they can think of in their head. Whereas like they could go to the party. Yeah, they didn't get a chance to like talk to every single person there or be as social as they wanted to, but maybe they talked to like 2 people there. And then and those 2 people were like, okay, let's hang out later kind of thing as well. So again, it wasn't like it didn't meet the expectations that they thought of or like the best possible way it could go, but it also wasn't the worst possible way it could have gone, right? So I think like the point is trying to think about and open ourselves to alternative possibilities of how things can go, is I think what you're trying to pertain to.
Well, and something I'll add, Don, to that I think is important is like the one thing, like I said, when things are as bad, I always look at it as how can we show our students or people we're working with that we're allies for them before they need us, right? And the hard part is a lot of times it takes time. So I'll go to a couple of examples. Like we talked about, pro-social behaviors, doing things for others. I mentioned gratitude journals. Some of those well-being practices that you can incorporate into your class or some of those things. It can be bringing in a shameless plug, a presenter from the Morrison Family Center for Student Wellbeing to come and talk about stress, to talk about resources, whatever it is. So those students, you're showing you care and you are dedicated to helping them no matter what they're going through. So that you never know then when it does get as bad or it can be as bad as what they're worried about, Dawn, they see you as an ally that they can come up and talk to, right? And that's the other challenge for us as professionals, knowing and understanding what the resources are that are available to our students, because they do change a lot, right? Like we get new services all the time, and maybe some change or a contract runs out, right? So there is a little bit of work on our half of faculty, staff, people that work at the university to find ways to be as up to date about what is available to students as possible. Another shameless plug for the Morrison Family Center for Student Wellbeing. We have an assistant director, Janine LeMay, that will work with faculty and staff and come out and talk to them about, hey, here are what are available for students, because it does change a lot. So I kind of look at it as like it's a commitment to time, us as staff being intentional about what we introduce. So then when they do hit that part where it's like, oh, this is as bad as I thought it was, they see you as someone that can help connect them and help them get the help they need, as opposed to someone that doesn't really care about them, if that makes sense.
And that kind of goes along with this next question here. Is when do you know when loneliness is becoming a chronic issue? When should you seek that mental health support? So we've maybe identified it, we've noticed it in the classroom, it's not getting any better. What do we do next?
Yeah. I would say, again, definitely loneliness kind of becomes chronic when it starts to shape how you see yourself and also how you see others. So, for example, if the feeling of loneliness or disconnection leads to kind of ongoing sadness or like for longer periods of time, right? Loss of motivation, or like the loss of like interest in activities that used to bring you joy before, or you realize you're struggling with like sleep, or you're pulling back from relationships and isolating yourself. I always try to maybe set that baseline of like, if you feel like you are thinking about these things for at least 1 hour every day, that is probably a sign that you may need to seek some support or some professional help with that. And a lot of times, and obviously there's a lot of factors that lead to this, but a lot of times we tend to wait until we're at the worst possible point to seek support or like to talk to someone, right? But that doesn't necessarily have to be like the case. Like therapy can be a space to explore just what's missing, like processing the barriers to communication or connection that people are having, and also just helping them figure out like identifying realistic steps towards belonging. And so again, I often always just, and obviously this is a biased opinion, but I often encourage students that come in to see us that like them coming in here is not a sign of weakness, but as a form of courage, because something in their head just said to them that I want something different for myself. Right. And that in itself is what motivated them to just come in in the first place. So it's we all experience it. I'm sure like you would probably be lying if you say that you've never experienced loneliness in your life, because it is a universal human experience, and you're not alone in feeling alone. That's a bar. Yeah. So yeah, so again, like doing that, or again, even going back to engaging in service, right? That can be a sort of healing process as well. So finding ways to just volunteer or mentor, or just simply maybe like help a friend with their homework can be a part of that healing process, right? And so creating those small, meaningful moments of connection, but noticing like, again, going back to the question of when this is happening more than usual, right? Or like, again, like if you feel like you're thinking about it for like more than an hour every day, that's probably a sign that you should seek some support.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Karin.
for me, the win is just similar to Karin. Whenever they feel like it's been going on longer than they want it to, and they can't really feel like they have a way to make it better. We see, to Don's earlier point, we do see lots of people who they almost need like permission from us to say that it is bad enough to do something about it. And by the time they get to us, when we do a lot of screening, survey, questionnaire kind of stuff to get a gauge of how severe their mental health issues are, typically for something like this. And a lot of times it's way higher than what they think it is. And I sometimes will show them and say, look, you're in the moderate or severe range for your depression or anxiety, and loneliness is a big part of that. So it's okay for you to try medicine, talk to a therapist, go to that next level of treatment. Because what we hear a lot from students is, well, I'm not bad enough to need medicine, or I'm not bad enough to need to talk to a therapist. And really, we want to catch people when they feel like they're not bad enough before they get to where it's really bad. So we always try to praise them and say, you're doing the right thing. There are things we can do to try to prevent it from getting worse than what you feel like it is now. But most of the time, it's like, no, you actually are at a level where it would be appropriate to consider these things, not telling them that they need to do them necessarily, but um, so I would just encourage them, if they feel like they don't know ways that it's going to get better without some kind of help, treatment, something different than what they're doing, to refer them and get them more support.
Thanks, Dr. Gamble. With our last kind of 10-ish minutes, we wanted to open it up for questions. So feel free to ask something specific to your teaching context or something broader, campus culture related, fire away.
So I can chime in. My name is Jeff Roberts. I'm the graduate research assistant for the TLC. I'm in Don's lab, actually. And so speaking on behalf of the students, I know grad students especially have a tendency to either study in groups or study alone, right? And there's a solo studying, and it's all really stressful, right? No matter what you do. So you've got that stress variable added in there. And I just wanted to know if anybody on the panel had any perspectives on, is it better to force yourself to group study, or, if you're more comfortable solo studying, is that okay? Is that a sign? Like, what do you think about different approaches to tackling some of the stressful stuff that grad students face?
To me, I think it depends a little bit on what you feel like you get out of it. So it depends on the subject. If it's something where you feel like you're going to be more efficient studying by yourself, that's okay. I will say that many studies show that if you're studying, even if it's not the same thing, but just being around other people that are studying, that gives us a little bit of that sense of connection and more better feeling hormones kind of thing. So I would encourage people that are kind of anti, that feel like they would never want to study in a group. Well, they could solo study with other people that are solo studying. That's a lot of people go to the library for that same purpose. They feel like they just get more done. They feel better when they're done because they're around other people going through the same thing. It's not like, oh, I'm the only one that has to study. It can be motivating a little bit too. So my thought is that even solo studying with other people around you is probably better than just feeling like you're in the same room and you never leave your bedroom because you're studying all the time. Like, we need some variety as humans too, and the four walls can start to close in on you. So I wouldn't make them group study if they felt like that wasn't going to be beneficial for them, but they could still get similar, maybe not quite as strong, but similar benefits by being around other people and solo studying that way.
I agree. I think, again, like, everyone has their own processes, right? Everyone has their process that works best for them. And so even if it is like Dr. Campbell said, I'm thinking of also like the Academic Achievement Center has like the body doubling service, right? So it's just like having someone else like working there and you just being around that, that is a really solid service that they offer in terms of just like having someone around you to maybe encourage that sense of connection, or also just keep you accountable with like your work, right? So if it is that that you struggle with like studying with other people because you'll just get distracted, but you also can't study by yourself because you also get distracted, which is like a lot of ADHD sometimes like tends to be that way. Like that can be a really solid middle ground to kind of think about as well. And so if it is that like your process is like you do work best by yourself when it comes to work, then let's look for other opportunities to find connection as well outside of when we're not working, right? So that could be just like getting food with people, getting meals with people, that kind of stuff. Because a lot of times, like I think grad students, like, and speaking from my own experience, one thing that I really learned from that is like, even though you have like a cohort with you, you all are going on the same journey together. But I like to think of it as like a tree, right? So the tree trunk is the cohort, and everyone develops their own branches. So everyone goes in their own separate pathways in terms of like what they're working on research wise or applied work wise and that kind of stuff. And a lot of us fall into the trap of like comparing ourselves to other people in terms of what they're doing, but there isn't like a good way of studying or a bad way of studying. It's again like you figure out what works best for you, and that is again like part of the collaborative approach that I and I'm sure Dr. Campbell work on as well in terms of like helping them figure out like what works best for them.
The other thing that I'd say, and this makes me think of med school a lot, because you always in med school always felt like I should be studying no matter what I did. I felt like
Mhm.
if I was taking time to eat, that was taking time away from when I should be studying. And what you realize as you get older is how important breaks are. And you are more efficient as a studier if you do take some breaks instead of try to study for 6 straight hours. You're not going to retain all that stuff if you're just turning into a zombie reading the screen. So that could be a time where they could get some connection. Say, hey, I know we aren't studying the same thing, but do you want to meet and we can go for a 15-minute walk? I need to take a break later today. I need to grab some food. So like the break times could be times where they could build some connection as well and make sure they're getting a few breaks.
That's great. Thank you both.
I went ahead and dropped the link for the Refuel and Refocus information for the semester coming out of the Academic Achievement Center. It was interesting that you brought that up because that is something that First Lady Linton is working on with that body doubling. She's an ADHD life coach, and so that's a method that she uses with her own clients and wanted to bring it here on campus. Any other questions?
So the services that have been mentioned are all pretty much Manhattan centric, aren't they? They don't deal with online students or Salina students. I don't know how that would work with a campus fees question.
I can talk a little bit to that. With if we're looking at the clinical route, right? We're looking at, I'm going to use for mental health, let's say a therapist or counseling. I know I'll use like there are telehealth mental services and it's mental health that are available to all online Olathe Salina campuses, things of that nature. And right now that service is through Central Kansas Mental Health is who it's through. So that is a 24/7 resource for anybody that's enrolled at K-State, no matter what campus or if you're online. And what that service can do is one, it can provide a little bit of that, or it can provide that crisis intervention, right? That maybe that person needs, but it's also available for them to set up ongoing clinical mental health care. Let's say maybe they're worried about the stigma with mental health. Let's say maybe they can't make it into when the counseling center is open. We want to have a support there for them. So that's one of the mental health ways that we're looking at. They're one of the resources we're looking at to help expand that mental health to everybody at K-State. And there'll be new ones that'll be coming out relatively soon that we'll be advertising. But I know that's one that we have now. And I don't know if I missed any, Karin, or not, and Dr. Campbell.
I think there's a link on the CAPS website to that as well. If you click, it's like 24/7 support,
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah. We're partnered with the Central Kansas Mental Health Center right now. And so yeah, that can definitely be a really important and helpful resource to have. Thank you for bringing that up actually, Richard. I think it's really important for us to acknowledge that we're not just in Manhattan and we have other campuses and stuff as well, for sure. So I appreciate you bringing that up.
Melissa in the chat had a really great question, talking about how it's really easy for us to model growth mindset, talk about our failures and stuff like that. But when it comes to loneliness, mental health, friendship, it feels a little different to talk about that. So, what's
Mhm.
helpful for us to share with our students? What isn't?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think the key with that is coming from a place of support and maybe not like trying to center it on yourself, right? Like it doesn't have to necessarily be that like you need to have that specific experience that the students can relate to. But I think more coming from the place of like what is your intent of even sharing like whatever struggle you want to share is, right? And so a lot of times like it can be really helpful to just like normalize that like we all just struggle with belonging or connection at times, especially when it's framed around like when you are describing like what helped you move through it rather than like the details of your own hardship. Maybe kind of expressing and sharing like what was it that helped you kind of come out of that or work with that, because students will maybe probably benefit more when the disclosures specifically are just like brief, intentional, and just focused more on like fostering hope or just again modeling that like self-compassion, like you mentioned. So yeah, I think like normalizing that, and empathize is the biggest thing that you can do, and just letting them know, yeah, like you're not alone. We all deal with this. We all struggle with this from time to time. And so helping them maybe figure out like what can we help you do about this, right? Like how can I support you in trying to find like do something about this? So again, it could go back to a lot of the different resources and initiatives that are available like on campus, like Chris talked about, because like it's not about your story doesn't need to be perfect, right? Because no one's perfect. And so modeling the authenticity, modeling the growth aspect of things, and modeling the self-compassion is what you are doing to help invite students to know that like they can also do the same for someone else, as well.
Well, we
Yeah,
are
Don.
about out of time. So I hope that all of you would join me in thanking our wonderful panel today for talking about well-being and health and all of those kind of things that are so important all the. Thank you all for your wonderfully astute opinions and guidance and contributions that you make on our campus every single day. We're going to drop a post-event survey into the chat. We want to hear people's opinions on this. The post-event survey is also available on our website. I want to remind you, our professional development series happens every week, noon, real time over Zoom. We archive the events for asynchronous viewing later. We'll post that a little later today. Next week, we'll be talking about student motivations to use AI. Our next 3 events are going to be related to AI, and we look forward to seeing you all there. So thank you so much and have a great rest of your afternoon.